Hello everyone, so these will be notes 3A.2, angle relationships of triangles. So we're going to focus on these four kind of relationships today, and then how we can use those to find missing angles. So similar to what we did with the angles section, okay? So the first thing we need to know is sum of interior angles. So for a triangle, there's three angles, okay? All three of them have to add to equal 180 degrees. So all three angles must add to equal 180 degrees. So for example here, if I have a triangle and I have this one's 80 degrees and here's 30 degrees, okay, well I can think, all right, well 80 plus 30, that's 110. I need 70 more to get to 180, so that would be my missing angle here. Okay, so that's a good one that's really easy that you can a lot of times find another angle from. All right, isosceles angles. So isosceles side triangles. So we know that they have two equal sides. And I'm going to do the triangles like that. So if they have the two equal sides, they also have two equal angles, or congruent. Okay, and these are specific ones, so I'm going to show you here. So say, all right, isosceles triangle, so this side is congruent to this side. All right, when you have that, so the angle that's directly opposite the side, so if this is my side, that angle would be opposite it. Okay, so this angle here is going to be congruent since this other side will be congruent to that angle there. So the two congruent sides, they're opposite, the angles opposite from them are also congruent. Okay, equilateral angles. So kind of similar here, equilateral side triangles. Also have congruent angles. And in this case, we'll come back to that actually. So equilateral triangle looks kind of like that. My pen's being shaky today, but so each of those sides are congruent. So if I mark it like that, well then, similar to when the isosceles triangle, the angle is opposite. So, opposite of this one, it's congruent. All right, since all the sides are congruent, their angles will be congruent. In this case, though, we also know, well, if those are all three congruent, and all three of them have to add up to 180, they all have to be the same. So basically, I can think 3 times x for the angle equals 180. Well, if I divide by 3, each angle would equal 60. So anytime you have an equilateral triangle, all three sides will be 60. So I'm going to write that here too. Will each be 60 degrees. All right, and the last one, kind of new relationship for today, is exterior angle theorem. So this is an exterior angle is one that's kind of on the outside, which I'll show you an example, and it's going to be equal to the sum of the two opposite interior angles. So an exterior angle Okay, so an exterior angle is equal to the sum of the two opposite interior angles. So I'm going to draw an example here. So when I say exterior angle, it's going to have like your triangle and this line that's extending out here. Okay, it doesn't have to be a line, it could be a segment. But so if they give you in here, maybe they give you 70 degrees and 40 degrees. Okay, this angle here, right here, is going to be equal to the sum of 70 and 40. I cannot use this angle here. That would not work. Okay, so I'm going to take, make this x. So I know 70 plus 40 is going to equal x. So x equals 110 degrees. Okay. All right. Next spot there. Okay, so now looking at solving for x. So we want to think back to those relationships we just talked about to see how can we find like the missing parts or what else is there that we can know from this problem that they give us, okay? So number one, there aren't any congruent sides marked, so we don't know if they're isosceles or equilateral or whatever. There's no exterior angles, so really all I'm working with here is the sum of the angles. Well, we know all three have to be equal to 180, so all I'm doing is simply adding the three of these and saying equal to 180 to solve for x. Here they did not ask for an angle, they just asked for x. So I'm going to do 15 plus 7x from our first angle, plus 40 plus 55 equals 180. Okay, go ahead and pause the video here and just solve for x. All right, if you paused, hopefully you combine your like terms first. You should have gotten 110 plus 7x equals 180. Subtract 110. 7x equals 70. Divide by 7. X equals 10. All right, remember, always reread your question. Did it ask for x or did it ask for the angle? In this case, they just said x, so we are done. Okay, 2. We do not have all three angles, so we can't really find the 180 part. We don't know if they're isosceles or equilateral because they're not marked with any congruent symbols, but we do have this exterior angle right here. Remember, I can't use this one to help find that. I need the two opposite of it. So I need this one and this one. Okay, so what you do, it says this exterior is equal to the sum of the two opposite interior. So I'm going to add those up. And so the sum of these two, and set them equal to this to solve for x. So I want you to actually try to write the equation here and solve it. So again, take a pause. Okay, to check your equation, you should have done 44 plus 2x plus 6 equals 8x plus 2. All right, now start combining. So that gives me 50 plus 2x to 0 equals 8x plus 2. You can do it either way first, doesn't really matter what you do. I would probably subtract 2x to keep it positive. So that's 6x, and subtract a 2 from 50. So 48 equals 6x divided by 6. Oops. Out of room, but x would equal 8 then. Okay, on to the next two. So 3, we have the measure of angle 2 equals x plus 53. So they didn't label that for you, so you want to go ahead and just kind of do that. And I'm just going to do it with an arrow. So x plus 53. All right. We do have sides, congruent sides marked, and this shows us 2 are congruent, so that's an isosceles. So from our isosceles angle that we wrote about, now we also know that those angles opposite are congruent. So opposite, remember, I mean this one here is congruent to this one over here. So those two are congruent. So if they're congruent, well, now I know that this is also x plus 53 because those are the same, right? Okay, now I'm not really done because I have to go a step further because I still don't have x. I just know that they're equal and I'm actually looking for x. So, but I do know that all three of these together will equal 180 just because that's the sum of a triangle's angles. So now I can set this up equal to 180. I would go ahead and combine these two before I write it out, okay? But I can't forget the 96 in here as well. So if I combine those, and actually I'll write it before, so if I didn't combine them, the x plus 53 plus x plus 53 plus 96 equals 180. So once I combine all of those like terms, I should have 2x plus 202 equals 180. All right, I subtract 202. So that gives me a negative, all right? So that's negative 22 divided by 2. X equals negative 11. Remember, it's okay for x to be negative. It's not okay for an angle to be negative. All right, moving on to 4. So again, we have to label what they give us. The measure of angle 2, so right here, is x plus 130. So x, plus 130. Okay, we also have these isosceles sides marked, so there and there, meaning so opposite, so this angle is congruent to this angle. Well, they already gave us this one, so now I can also label that as 31 degrees. So that should match up. And again, now we can set this up with adding them and setting them equal to 180. Okay, so I want you to take a pause and try to write the equation and solve on this one. Actually, just write the equation first, then we'll check it, then have you solve. Okay, so if you're doing the equation, I should have had x plus 130 plus 31 plus 31 equals 180. Now go ahead and pause again to solve the whole thing. All right, if you're checking, once you combine like terms, you should have had x plus 192 equals 180. Subtract 192, x equals negative 12. All right, now we're going to go on to actually finding the angle, not just x. So remember, always reread your question. Do you need to plug x in, or is that all you have to do? So we're looking for the measure of angle UEF. So first we have to find where that's at. So that is this angle. All right, I know that is an exterior angle because it's outside of my triangle, and it's going to be equal to the sum of the two opposite of it. So this plus that equals this. Okay, so go ahead and take a minute here, pause the video, see if you can write the equation to get x, and then we'll check your equation. So just the equation. Okay, you should have had 6x plus 5 plus 65 equals 16x. All right, so make sure you have that correct, otherwise the rest will be wrong. But go ahead and pause and try to get the entire question here. Remember, focus on rereading your directions to make sure you did what they asked. Okay, if you've paused and are checking, we should have 6x plus 70 equals 16x. I subtract 6x. Okay, so we should have got x equals 7, but test or quiz, that answer would not be right because we have to plug back in. So I'm going to say angle UEF equals 16x because that's what that gave us in the problem. I'm writing it like this because when we get to proofs, this is how you'll want to write it, is like actually writing out specifically what it says, okay? So I know that was like my given info, all right? Then I would say, well, I'm going to 16, now I know x is 7, so I'm going to plug that in and substitute. So I have angle, I've solved that out, is 12, so angle UEF equals 112 degrees. Okay? All right, so 6, find the measure of angle F. So I'm looking for this one, all right? So pretty much every time you have to start with solving for x and finding that, and then you go from there to plug in, okay? So again, we can use our exterior angle because we have this total out here. So I know this plus this will equal that. Okay, so let's try to do, you guys do this whole thing through. So set the equation up, solve, then plug in. Okay, so your original equation should have been 8x plus 8 plus 14x minus 6 equals 134. Simplify to 22x plus 2 equals 134. Subtract 2. 22x equals 132. Divide by 22. X equals 6. Okay, so we have that part. And now I just need to plug in for angle F. So again, be specific in writing out. So angle F equals 8x plus 8. Well, now I'm going to substitute in because I have x. So that's 8 times 6 plus 8. Simplify that out. Angle F equals 56 degrees. Okay? Just realizing I feel like I say okay a lot on these, but it's weird when you're not really talking to anyone. Okay, well, did it again. 7, so this one's set up a little bit differently here. Let me see if I can bring this down. No. Okay, well, I guess you can see it on yours, but so it shows us up here that that's a 90-degree angle, okay? But I cannot go in and assume that this is 45 and this is 45 because it's actually not true on this. So be careful that this is not a bisector here. It's just a line in between. We don't know that they're equal. So I need to make sure I find this first, this angle up here, okay? So I'll write that for you. So find first. Okay, so we can do that because I have this 89, 44. Well, I can get the other because it needs to equal 180. So 89 plus 44 plus x equals 180. So that's 133 with those two together. And then if I subtract, x would equal 47. Okay, so that angle there is 47. Well, if I know those two together equal 90, on that part you can't really see on my screen, I can just take 90 minus 47 to give me 43 for this one, all right, because that's what a right triangle is, right? So if I were doing a proof, I would think like, well, definition of right triangle because they equal 90. All right, now I can get this question mark side because, again, I can use all three, add to equal 180. Well, I have 77 plus 43 plus our question mark. I'll just put question mark since that's what they had. You can use x also, though. Equals 180. Well, simplify. That's 120 plus question mark equals 180. Subtract. I'm going to put x slash question mark for whichever you wrote. And that comes out to 60. Okay, and you can always like add these three together and just kind of check and make sure that that works out. Okay, but our final answer here would need to be this. Because because I didn't actually have a question there. So we're assuming the question was a question mark. Okay, 8. So this looks a little bit different, and sometimes this throws people off because it's got all these lines going on, but it's essentially just 2 triangles, okay? And again, using that 180 a lot, okay? So I want you guys just to pause this actually and see if you can find, let's start with finding this angle. So pause and see if you can get that. All right, I'm going to call that x. If you paused, you should have had 21 plus 64 plus x equals 180. If you wrote it as an equation, you didn't necessarily have to, but it's one way. Okay, so that simplifies 85 plus x equals 180, and then I would subtract 85, so x equals 95. So this here is 95 degrees. All right, now here we have to think back a little bit to our angle relationships. So we don't have currently any way of getting over to this other triangle because we only have this 24 degrees. We don't have anything else to go on. But if we think back to angle relationships, 95 degrees here, you want to think which angle, if we know that, what other angle do we know? So hopefully you remember that we know this one because those are vertical angles, meaning they're opposite each other and they are always congruent. So now that one is 95. And now you should be able to go in and find your question mark. So again, take a pause, find the question mark angle. Okay, you should have done 95 plus 24 plus, I'm going to call this one y. Equals 180, so that's 119 equals 180 minus 119. Y would equal 61 degrees. And that is what we need for our final answer. Okay, last one. So this one's kind of different because it has a lot of shapes going on together. So first of all, we have the first thing that you can really start anywhere because we have to find x, z, and y. Okay, so first thing I noticed was that we have an equilateral triangle here, right? So all those sides are congruent, but we don't know any of those yet, so it's not showing us much. Okay, now I can look, well, I have this and this, so what else can I start with? I believe I started with finding y. Now I actually start with z, but either way. So if I start with y, I know 60, this one's 90, and I need to find y. So 60 plus 90 plus y equals 180. All right, so 150 plus y equals 180. Subtract the 150, y equals 30. So there's my first one. And I'm just going to write, oh yeah, we'll do it like that. Okay, so for that one, I'm using my sum of interior angles relationship. Okay, now over here for z, I can use the exterior angle theorem. So that tells us that z is going to equal 30 plus 38. So that should be a pretty quick one. So z equals 30 plus 38. So z equals 68 degrees. And I'm going to write beside these actually, so of what relationship I used. So up here I said sum of interior angles. Okay, to find z, I used the exterior angle theorem. All right, and then now I need to get x. So for x, basically it's just kind of a quick thing. I know, okay, if this is x, well, if these are all three congruent, their angles are also congruent. So that is congruent to here, is congruent to here. So basically, those are also x. So I could say that 3x equals, well, they have to equal 180 together, and simply divide by 3. So x equals 60 degrees, And I could know that if I were, so like I was saying, if I were justifying on a proof or something, I would say, well, that's because it's an equilateral angles. Okay. All right. So that is the end of today's. Hopefully that made sense. Again, please be asking any questions that you need. Please be staying on top of your homework and checking with Miss Bowles for the answer key and to check your work. Okay. All right. Have a good week.